As I mentioned, it's really difficult to 100% AI proof your assignments, but there are some things you can do to make it less attractive for students to use AI. So there are some pieces of advice online and in my own experience that I think might be helpful. One is that your assignments should focus on higher order tasks. So asking students to synthesize, to create, to produce something that isn't just rote memory or things that they could easily ask AI to do will, make it less attractive for them to rely on those Gen AI tools. You can require those process documents as we discussed, such as drafts or asking them to detail the list of steps taken. You can integrate reflective self-assessments, so asking them to evaluate the work they turned in, what did they do well, what didn't they do, what would they improve. You could ask them about their learning journey throughout the semester and pick out some assignments they're particularly proud of and what they learned from that. There are oral defenses or checkpoints where you ask them to explain to you certain concepts to check their understanding and knowledge. You could use real or local data that's harder for Gen AI to fabricate. So if you want them to, analyze something and work through recommendations based on the outcomes, that's going to be harder for Gen AI to fabricate, and you could give them that data. You could incorporate in-class creation components so that you're there watching them work, and hopefully that would lessen their reliance on Gen AI. If you do allow AI-developed work, you should also ask them to include a learner's statement. So have them evaluate what the AI tool did well, where it fell short, what adjustments they made, and what they'll keep in mind for the next time. When you have conversations with students, it's important to acknowledge the limitations and risks of AI. It's very prevalent now, and so they may not have taken the time to really stop and think about where it's working and where it's not. This image is actually what PowerPoint gave me when I typed in AI. It's a little scary, but it shows this kind of pulling random information and forming it into something else. But help students understand that there are often hallucinations and inaccurate information. These generative AI tools are only as good as the content they're fed, and if they don't know the answer, they'll make it up. And so they need to know that there is that possibility. There's also bias in the output. It's not always all-encompassing, and it's often it's not current. So students need to know that there is a chance that they're missing more current relevant information. We often don't know where that information is even coming from, so it's very easy, again, for this bias to exist. So there's a lack of source transparency. It's hard to know, like, where did you find this? Some of the tools are starting to embed that, but even then, the links that they are going to aren't always the best sources. So helping students understand that. We also need them to recognize that if they are this over-reliance on AI leads to reduced skill development, that there may come a time when this tool isn't here or they won't have access to it, and they still need to be able to do certain important elements for a career. There are definitely data privacy and ethical concerns. I've turned Copilot off on my computer because there's a concern about how it would access student information. And so students need to be very cautious about putting information into these databases. And then there's also environmental concerns for people who have questions about the environmental impact in terms of water use and the energy required for these data centers. So we could spend a whole class session on generative AI, and unfortunately we don't have time to do that. But I am curious where your head's at. Where do you think, what do you believe should be the role of AI in the college classroom? So in your response, tell me what are some of the benefits you see offering students or instructors? What are concerns or risks we should be aware of? And then based on your own experiences, what guidelines or boundaries would you recommend for responsible AI use in the course? And please include any examples from your own teaching, coursework, or professional experiences if that helps, better illustrate your points. So in conclusion, these generative AI tools are here. I don't think they're going anywhere. So we need to consider how students are using them and how we could utilize them. Providing clear policies about generative AI use will help students recognize what is and is not allowed in the class. And we need to consider assignment design as an important strategy to maintain academic integrity.